So I have here a printout of an article from the Federalist website, written by an Allison Hull, titled, "Why Does Disney Hate Boys So Much? All Their Male Characters Are Losers." I wouldn't go as far as losers, but I am going to read the article and probably comment a little on it, because that's hard to completely avoid. Go through it, because this topic really does need talking about and addressing. Okay, so it was written by Allison Hull. I was a Disney child, raised on it all. I fell hook, line, and sinker for The Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and even Toy Story. When Pixar started making movies, I was even more enthralled. I even watched all the Disney shows. Many people don't remember their show in the evening called Ev and Leia, but I do. It caused me to read all the Anne of Green Gables series and cultivated my love of reading. So I'm always excited when the next Disney movie pops up. While I'm entranced by the beauty of the gowns and music, my husband is a little more cynical about all this Disney stuff. He was also raised on the Disney movies of the 90s, yet he's seen a downward trend that I've just picked up on. Disney has been trying to push that girls, or rather princesses, can do anything they set their mind to. The Dream Big Princess campaign is huge on their channels right now. They've gotten a huge backlash from the left, saying they don't want girls dreaming of being princesses and longing for a prince to set them free. They don't need a man to make them happy. Now, happy is a very vague and undefined term, especially today. But we'll move on. We'll get to that in a minute. So Disney now focuses on having girls dream big. Pretty good, right? But in their scurry to make girls feel feel empowered and valued, Disney has left out the other sex, boys. So I know it just turned dark, and this video is the background's gonna be dark light. I'm writing and recording this at different times of the day. But first question: what does empowered even mean? I mean, really, what does that word even mean? And as far as valued, girls are valued. In fact, we treat little girls way better than we treat little boys in the Western world. Not so in the Islamic world, but I'm assuming that's not what we're talking about here. And in many other countries. It's not just the Islamic world, it's all over the place, but they are some of the worst. Anyway. In things like, little girl hits a little boy, it's either just brushed off or cheered on. Little boy hits a little girl, "Oh, how dare you!" School, as terrible as it is quite a bit more friendly to girls than to boys. I have only boys. We watch the Disney Channel, but they've noticed there is no commercial for them. There is no encouragement for boys to have big goals. Boys are completely left out of the equation. There isn't even a picture of a boy in any of their videos or ads. In a world that is pushing gender inclusivity, this seems like a big oversight. It got me miffed and made me look at everything under a microscope. Who are the male role models in Disney movies? Why do we have to push men to the side in order to encourage women? Non-Disney movies participate in the same trend. In Bad Moms, you have the unappreciated man-child, the sex symbol, and the overbearing husband who never wants his wife out of the house. Feminism has produced a hatred and overgeneralization of men. Kudos for recognizing that. Where are all the John Wayne figures? Gone are the men who can be funny, sensitive, and yet virile and able to save the day. In their place are whiny babies, bumbling idiots, or mean, hurtful men. And this has been a trend that's been going on for the last several decades. In movies, in television shows, although more universally in television shows than in movies, because you will occasionally get a brave, powerful male protagonist in movies, but even that is severely declining, and really almost gone. So now we come to the section titled, Here, let's run through the princess movies. Let's look at the princes from the 1990s Disney films. Start with Eric from The Little Mermaid. He's strong, funny, charming, a little easy to persuade, as far as Ursula shows. Yeah, like Ariel didn't completely fall for it hook, line, and sinker. But caring and loyal. He sacrifices himself for the woman he loves. This is someone I'd want my boys to emulate. Now, let's look at the Beast. He's mean, quick to lose his temper, and yet he's lived a life that showed him true inner beauty. Has he? Really? He learns how to love, and defends not just his castle, but Belle, from villagers set on destroying everything. He figuratively and literally turns from a beast into an amazing, strong, caring man who yet again gives his life for those he loves. My boys would probably pretend to be the Beast, but they'd see what he chooses to be instead of what he had turned into, and hopefully that gets ingrained in them. Now check Aladdin. He's stinky, smelly, has lice, and steals. I guess they say that in the movie, but, that's more out of, if he, as he says in his song, gotta steal to eat. He's doing it because he'd otherwise starve. It's not like he's doing it to be a thief. He's not a thief because he enjoys being a thief. No, it's either that or starve to death. So a bit of a different situation there. But it's okay because he's an orphan and lives with a monkey in a hovel. While not the worst male character in the film, the stealing and overall behavior leaves much to be desired. Again, it's completely out of necessity. But he tries to better himself and is intensely loyal and selfless to Jasmine, once again intent on giving up his life to save his love. Those are the princes of the 90s Disney movies. They're the only male characters that you'd want your sons to want to be like. They're the only role models from Disney worth their snuff. Really? No Simba? I mean... The other male characters are the villains or overbearing, clueless fathers who bumble around or break all the girls' things. Even in this era, male role models leave a lot to be desired. Other 90s Disney movies, you have... Pocahontas screws with history so much, I don't know if I want to use that. Quasimodo and Phoebus aren't that bad examples. Hercules, though it kind of collapsed as a movie, still, he's training to be a hero the entire time. What about Tarzan? Is he not strong, caring? And he's not a thief. And also, there were, in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were animated series of actually, the Tarzan animated series came a bit later. It was actually really good on the Disney Channel. There was a series of a teenage Hercules animated series on the Disney Channel that was actually better than I thought they'd do. It was actually a lot better than the movie in many, many ways. Though the villains were pretty bumbling, but nevertheless, the episodes were pretty good. Compare to the latest Disney movies. When Brave came out, I thought it was an instant classic. The mother-daughter dynamic was really poignant. I thought it was kind of irritating and had been done before, but this movie had no strong male characters. No one for my sons to look to. There's the bumbling dad again, who loves much and yet is easily distracted into fighting and other ambitions that usually hold precedence over his family. Not really. He was a family man. He just didn't really take much charge. I guess that's a bit of a problem, but he was Yeah, he was a good family man. He doesn't do much as king except let his wife lead while he follows. Well, that was a flaw, but he was a nice guy at least. The suitors and their fathers are pretty much equally disgusting. Disgusting is a bit far, but then there's the villain who became a bear because he wanted the whole kingdom for himself. Okay, he's the villain. The brothers are rambunctious and unruly. They're like 5. So nothing there for my boys to do except say, feast your eyes several times. Thank you, Disney. Frozen was next on my list. And Frozen is a problem. Okay, it enchanted me with amazing scenes and music. They were beautiful. My son wanted to be Elsa for Halloween and watched it many, many times because of her. Yet in this film, the men were just background noise. The villain, Hans, is the charming man who wants to marry Anna but only for selfish reasons and then kill her. The other man in the story is an Aladdin look-alike, Kristoff. He's smelly, dirty, eats food with his reindeer, and has no other friends. But unlike Aladdin, trolls love him. Okay, he does have the troll friends. This author's a bit... She's not too far off. She gets it a bit wrong. I don't know why this emphasis on smelly. They're movies. It's not like you're there smelling them, which, if you were, that might turn you off, but... Trolls love him and are his family. They want him to bathe and look nice. He is in the mountains most of the time. He's not in situations where that's often the main priority. He's street smart, but still lets Anna take the lead. When Kristoff finally realizes he loves Anna, he tries to rescue her but can't. Opposite to the Beast, he doesn't sacrifice himself, but watches her sacrifice for her sister. Well, I blame the writing more than anything else, but... In the end, he's just comedic fodder for 2 charismatic princesses. While Kristoff is not a bad role model, Anna walks all over him, and I'm not sure that's something I want for my sons. Strong women, yes, but weak men who in the end don't do anything? No. Now for Moana. As someone who lived in Hawaii for a short time, I was really interested in what Disney would do with this. Disney had made a movie in Hawaii several years prior, Lilo and Stitch, which was amazing as a movie. So it's not the first time they've gone to Hawaii in their stories. The only male characters in the movie are the father and Maui. The father, again, is the overbearing, controlling dad who will not let Moana get into the ocean water or go past a certain point. He wants her to stay in the safety of his wings. As an adult now, I can understand his point of view and would do the same with my children. Do you live on a tiny island? Well, she did live in Hawaii. Not anymore. She said she lived previously, but... the ocean is dangerous, but it's not always... the water isn't always sentient and creating thinking waves. It's neither here nor there. Although some sailors might say otherwise. But it's not at all attractive to a boy, and it really is not. The overprotective parent is a character that does really turn children off. It does. Ultimately, Moana proves that her father is wrong and she knows better. I would say she barely succeeds in the end. I wouldn't say she ultimately knows better. She just barely succeeds and figures out the solution in the end. So it's not quite that bad, but Maui, the demigod, is of course is impulsive, crazy, initially mean, and thinks only of himself and how others can praise him. He slowly comes around to trying to sacrifice for humanity, but he doesn't save the world. Moana does. His actions are just a small help to her, and she could probably have done it all without him. I would give Moana, the film, a little bit of a pass because it's almost the reverse. Moana herself does almost give up in the movie. Now, so does Maui, but I would go a little bit easier on Moana. But Maui's only contribution is to show her how to sail. Then he leaves and sometimes flies over her as she sails with her family. The males take a backseat again to the strong female character. We do get a lot of that in movies, and soon the article is going to talk about what Disney did with Star Wars, which I would say is a far, far greater insult than anything Moana ever could be accused of. Moana, I thought, was not that bad. Although, I personally do have one problem, not directly related to this, but Maui in the movie can shapeshift. And one of his shapes is the giant hawk, and actually it's one of his more common shapes. Why isn't it a Harpagornis eagle? Why isn't it a Paukai? That is a creature in Maori, in Polynesian legends, based on the largest eagle that ever lived, that was the only bird of prey to habitually, during his reign, hunt humans. Why doesn't Maui transform into a Paukai? Now, first of all, I'm glad that this woman wrote and published this article. Although she does mention having just become aware of this abandoning of boys, this removing of male role models for them. And even when she talks about the 90s Disney movies that had male leads or main characters, what does she point to as the best quality in them? That they sacrifice themselves for the woman they love. Yet later in the article, she says a boy or man allowing a girl or a woman to walk all over him is a quality that she does not want her boys to emulate and live up to. I do a contradiction, but before we talk about that, throughout human history, boys were usually raised predominantly by their mothers throughout infancy and early childhood. I don't know the exact ages usually when it would transition, but I mean, it's slightly different in different cultures. But come about the preteen and certainly the teenage years, when that wasn't already an adult by that cultures, or in prehistoric times, necessitated by the very short lifespan, boys would be more raised and taught, whether it be farming, hunting, warfare, skills of a trade, the heading of a family, not the running of the household itself. That was a task taught to girls and young women, but the providing for and protecting the family, and the managing of the family's assets. Things like finances, time and work management, being the sort of leveling out of the family's emotional versus logical life. Because males really are more hormonally attuned to these tasks and in building up these skills than women. It was either a father or father-like figure, sometimes uncle, sometimes grandfather, nevertheless, a strong adult male role model who would be there to teach the boy. And yeah, that's been almost completely lost from Western cultures. A lot of boys grow up never or barely knowing their fathers. Or even if they once had a great relationship with their father, the family was ripped apart because the mother one day was dissatisfied and wanted a divorce, and the family was forever destroyed. And there are fathers who leave the family. There are bad fathers, but the vast majority of divorces now are initiated by women. Something like 70 or 80% now. It's happened twice in my family so far. A little more complicated of a story with that, though not that different. But if you look at it from the perspective of a boy, the loss of a dad is a gigantic hole in their guidance and development throughout life. Why do you think so many stories in fiction, in Disney movies, even if it's not the central focus of the story, at least mention it? In the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker's entire journey was really about the search for his father. Granted, this is before he learned about what Anakin became, but if you're a deep lore Star Wars fan and follow the story of the decline of the Galactic Republic and the rise of the Empire through the books, the TV miniseries, the comics, it was not all Anakin's fault, or Anakin's bad decisions alone, by any means. Anime example. Inuyasha and Sesshomaru. In the anime titled Inuyasha, a lot of their rivalry revolves around either proving themselves worthy of or living up to their father's legacy, and of course defeating the villain, who does nothing but ruin lives throughout the entire series. Harry Potter. So J.K. Rowling loves to talk and write in the books themselves about how it was his mother's sacrifice that gave Harry the magical protection against Voldemort he had throughout the series. But remember, it was his father who, before that, stood at the threshold of his house, his castle, and actively fought the Dark Lord in a duel that he was almost guaranteed to lose, in order to attempt to his last breath to protect his wife and child. And the tragic thing is that this good man, this strong, courageous male protector, the potential to be that is inside each and every boy, but it has to be taught, it has to be nurtured, it has to be built up to by providing boys with a great childhood, with the freedom to run around the neighborhood, to sword fight with their friends. A couple of months ago, before the weather in the North American Midwest got cold, although it's going through a warm period right now, my brother and I were sword fighting with the Degorher swords I built for us. Let me go get them just to show you. Here we go. I've shown you my light blue double blade before. And my brother, I have his sword for now. He likes a single, thick, violet-colored sword. Well, it's actually just a t-shirt wrapped on it. But anyway, he's more about strength, whereas my fighting style is more based on agility. And we were talking some months ago about each other's strengths and weaknesses in swordplay. He was having trouble against me because he was flaying his sword all over the place, kind of more like you would a hammer than a sword. And against an agile opponent, that's not going to get anywhere. So we got to talking about Star Wars, and I suggested that he try something more like Anakin Skywalker's Djem So style, and keep the sword strikes at close range, keep them simple, and then you can emphasize power blows. It's true I'm an evasive fighter, but if I don't close in a sword fight, I don't get any hits in either. And my double-bladed sword gives me a larger range, but not so much that I'm always out of striking distance. So we went at it again, and he tried that, the Anakin Skywalker Djem So style, and it actually worked really well for him. And it forced me to have to find a way to deal with that kind of style. It was a lot of fun. Now the story makes it seem like he and I have these times constantly and had them growing up, but the truth is we barely get as much as an afternoon like this to hang out together, because we are actually half siblings, and a lot of our childhoods were drained by having to travel from one parent's house to another to school, which was abusively restrictive, both schools and home life's restrictions, and it is only getting worse for so many kids, boys in particular, all over the world. And this constant travel between houses, between parents who don't get along most of the time, or who are, the family's only being drained through the family courts. Sometimes, like what the five of us did, there's three girls as well as my brother and me among the siblings and half-siblings. It's a complicated story. Sometimes what the siblings will do is try to bond together, but they, as adults, they scatter. They can try to stay in touch, but it's not it's not the opportunity that it would have been during their childhoods. And and for us, it was horribly stressful most of the time. So we try to seize what times we can and make the most of them. And this type of play that I'm describing, the sword fighting, this restless, rambunctious play, my brother's a few years away from an adult still. I'm an adult, but we still do it. We've maintained the ability to be that active, but in order to keep doing that, because we were drained of it as kids, along with a decrease in restrictions that schools and families are only piling on kids, it's the decrease in restrictions and the increase in play that is what needs to occur during childhood and teenage years in order to allow the boys to develop into the strong, confident, resourceful, good men that women often wonder why there are less and less of. And it's because of what is done to them when they are boys. Let's move on with the article for a little bit, then we'll get back to that discussion. Now, so, remember the common complaint we mentioned from many women, where have all the good men gone? Right? Well, that's the title of the next part of the article. Disney writes no decent male characters for my sons to look up to anymore. If we want to look for male characters, we must look at inanimate objects like toys, planes, and cars. Even in the 90s, that was the case when a lion was the lead male character. Oh, so they do mention Simba. On TV, it's more the same. Lion Guard offers another impulsive boy, but at least he's the lead character. But there's no prince to Princess Sophia or Elena. Boys have lower supporting roles, but no lead. One could argue that Jake from Jake and the Neverland Pirates is a strong male lead character, but he's a pirate. He steals and plays all day. And Izzy is close to being the lead in that story. It's also an older show with rarely new episodes created. I watched a couple episodes of Jake and the Neverland Pirates. It's also a show for very young kids, so it's not going to provide much of a male role model for very long in a boy's life. Even the new Star Wars movies offer strong women and very few strong men. Finn is the closest we get, and he still is a coward who doesn't save people. The girl does. Poe Dameron, could be an option, but he's missing throughout most of the movie. In Rogue One, there's another female lead, and I'd bet money that the male characters are not even worth mentioning. Rogue One was significantly better than The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, but it really was a side movie. It was not part of the main episodic saga, although it's a direct prequel to A New Hope, but it is by no means an equal movie. I don't know the damage this ad campaign will do to boy psyches. No, it's not will do, it's has done. I'm saddened that Disney can't offer anyone for boys to look up to in human form. I'm saddened that they desperately look for boy characters. I think she's talking about her boys here, and can't find a decent one among the bunch. My 9-year-old has expressed his displeasure about this. He wants to pretend with his brothers, but they must argue about who to be, and my 4-year-old usually becomes a girl because there are no characters they would like to be but the villain. Who wants to be the older, overbearing dad? Indeed. I wish Disney would see how they are treating boys. Their stories suggest boys are supposed to take a backseat to girls and let them do whatever they want. Boys' dreams just aren't considered as important. They don't need to be cultivated and encouraged because they just don't matter as much. Is this the message we want to send to our boys who will soon become men? Sit down, shut up, and listen to the women? And Christina Hoff Sommers actually has a very good presentation on an issue very similar to this that's going on in childhood and in schools, in particularly for Prager University on YouTube. It doesn't really have to do with the university itself, but the school system in general. You should really check that video out. Women and men should be alarmed at this ongoing trend and take a stand. My boys are of value, and they need to be told they are special too. They also need to be told that they can save the day just like the women. Disney, listen up. I'm watching you. Give my boys something tangible, something for them to emulate that's real. Don't push boys to the side to build up the girls. Why can't we build and strengthen both? That is the end of the article, written in 2017 by Allison Hull. My guess as to why Disney's not doing both, build and strengthening both, is because that's not part of their agenda. Disney has been taken over by the feminists. We can all see it. And feminists have no interest in empowering either men or women. In truth, they just want to throw tantrums to the world and continue to have rights and privileges without responsibility or consequences. All the good stuff handed to them on a silver platters. If they actually gave a damn about women's rights, they would be furious about the invasions of the third world migrants who have brought their actual rape culture, not the whiny, false accusation happy feminist version that can't even settle on a defined enough standards of consent for anyone to navigate. And with their tantrums have destroyed what once were much more enjoyable family situations and dating environments. People continued to give them credibility even after they started to completely lose their mind decades ago. And what it has led up to is a situation so bad, what we have to do, we have to start telling them that their credibility is gone. The data has been collected that married women who are in a stable relationship with a good man, a loving husband and father to their children, and remember, we talked about this, though it has to be nurtured, guided, and built up to, every boy has the capacity to become that. So women who are in a loving, stable relationship in their adult lives, whether they be housewives or part-time teachers or authors or whatever they do in addition to taking care of the household and raising the children without hitting or yelling at the children, who talk to, listen to, and negotiate with their children rather than rule by punishments, are the happiest of all women. They really are. And there is a video about this last International Men's Day. International Men's Day falls on November 19th each year. And the discussion, you can find on YouTube, is titled "The State of Masculinity." Was published on November 19th, 2017. Among other videos he has talking about topics like this, this one is just one of the clearest. Talks about why so many men are choosing not to marry, and why women have become so unhappy in a overall large-scale sense. Especially the portion that begins about 10 minutes into the talk, he explains that if there comes a show or movie about relationships that shows a woman who is loved and treasured by her husband and children, where the father is a strong-hearted, compassionate guide and playmate to his children, a good provider, and is loved and treasured by his wife, it is just extremely painful for women who don't have that to watch that, as well as for men and for children to watch. And we have become, very tragically, a culture that rails against it. But what it means, what that anger at such a loss means, is that deep down, we all really do, or did, want this, want that life for ourselves, for our children. It means we really do want to grow up in and to build stable families. And if feminists gave a damn at all about people's lives and happiness, they would reconsider. With this evidence, they would reconsider the gender-dividing, family-destructive messages that they are all too willing to spit out over and over and over. Because that is what a rational person does. They reconsider their position based on reason, based on reality, based on new evidence that comes to light, and we do not see them doing that. When George Lucas handed over Star Wars to Kathleen Kennedy, she came out and blatantly said that she saw no need to cater to the male fans of Star Wars. She said it straight out. And I think we all kind of knew what was going to happen after that. It's time to stop hoping for any better from those kinds of people. So in the meantime, until these leftist and feminist tyrants are dethroned like the evil queens and wicked stepmothers they really are, boys may have to turn to older shows and movies for their role models while we work on bringing the strong male characters back. One of the shows that balanced the male and female protagonists very well, it occasionally pushed the sexist accusations a little too far, though nowhere near as bad as it is now, was Avatar: The Last Airbender. For the boy protagonists, you had Aang and Sokka. Zuko, who began as the villain, turned into still called one of the greatest characters ever written. And there was Uncle Iroh, who was awesome in his own right. In Star Wars, go back to the original trilogy, go back to Luke Skywalker. Go look at the expanded universe. Instead of Kylo Ren, you have Jason Solo, who is a far more interesting character. I mean, a lot of people call Kylo Ren the most interesting character of what Disney is attempting, not that that's saying that much. But Jason Solo, far more interesting, and far more of a developed story. There is the Mace Windu in the novel Shatterpoint. There's a very good book that follows 12-year-old Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi as they explore a rogue planet. The book is titled Rogue Planet. They're searching for a Jedi Master named Verger, who will show up periodically in the expanded universe. Very curious character. A female character, but the thing is, the search begins in the book Rogue Planet. I almost said Rogue One. No, Rogue Planet. 12-year-old Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, so this would be about 3 years after the events of The Phantom Menace. They go to a planet called Xenoma, which is the idea of planets being superorganisms. This one really is, and it's a very interesting story. It also talks a lot about, touches a lot on what it means to be a child and what children need as Anakin is growing up. I love the book. Go back to the Jedi Apprentice books that follow Obi-Wan Kenobi as he's just beginning as a Padawan with Qui-Gon Jinn. That was a favorite series of a lot of Star Wars fans in their childhood and teenage years. A lot of the deep lore fans who talk about Star Wars now got into the lore through Jedi Apprentice. Talk about Disney. There were the Aladdin, Hercules, and Legend of Tarzan Disney animated series. Not the movies, not the direct-to-DVDs movies, but the animated series. Look for those. If you can get a copy of those, they're actually pretty good. How about the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Cheesy as the first series is, it had distinct characters that were very enjoyable to watch. The original boys were Jason, Billy, Zach, and Tommy. The original girls, who had a very amiable team dynamic alongside the men, were Kimberly and Trini. Kimberly was played at the time by Amy Jo Johnson, and Trini by Twee Tran, who will always be, for me, and for many of us, the canonical Trini. I don't have any problem with Becky G and her performance itself. I mean, I have some problems with the writing. The 2017 movie, I actually have a review of that on my channel. You can probably find it. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do, which is not what I wanted from a Power Rangers reboot, but it did do it a bit better than I expected. Just so much to talk about. But I'm going on almost an hour ranting now. I guess this isn't, I guess some parts of it are random. So let's kind of wrap up here. So to Allison Hull, who wrote this article, well, thank you for writing it. And thank you for bringing this to more people's attention and for sticking up for your boys. I should briefly mention, I think I keep abandoning this topic because there's just so much to say, so many subcategories, so many tangents to go on. But the value of men sacrificing themselves for women, it's gone. It's completely gone because of the destructive feminist and leftist agenda of destroying gender relations, destroying families. Even the boys who attempt against all odds to grow up into the strong, confident men who will put themselves on the line to defend their women and children. My brother and I just went to go see, it was the weekend before this. I'm not seeing him this weekend. Was the movie 12 Strong, which I hope to do a discussion about that with him in person. So I will try to arrange that. It's difficult. It is one thing to ask men to do that when they are able to come home to loving families, when they are coming home to something to protect. In fact, going back to Inuyasha, not in the animated series, but in one of there's 4 Inuyasha movies, unless they made a 5th one before I knew it, but there's 4 Inuyasha movies, and the 3rd one is titled Swords of an Honorable Ruler. And it's a very good anime movie because it does a few things that you never saw in the series while perfectly fitting in with the series. And you do see Inuyasha and Sesshomaru's father, Inu no Taisho. I think it was given the name Toga. The very first scene of the movie, he is standing on a beach, looking out into the distance, and his son, Sesshomaru, who is much younger than you see him in the main series at the time, because this is the night of Inuyasha's birth. Sesshomaru is asking his father to lend him his swords of power. And Inu no Taisho asks Sesshomaru, "Do you have something to protect?" And the answer that Sesshomaru gives him is, "The path I walk is the path of supreme conquest. It is power that will be the way for me. Why would I waste my time protecting someone?" But come the time of that the main series takes place in, Sesshomaru's character arc is moving from his quest for his father's inheritance and quest for power to becoming a protector of the people who need him, of him growing compassion and growing in strength as well. And this is very similar to the journey in many ways that a lot of boys would have been very willing and wanted to take in their growing up to become men. That has been lost, and we need to fight to get it back. We need to give boys back their role models. We need to start improving childhoods and stop pushing boys to the side. So if you're a male watching this, I am truly sorry about what's being done to you. I am truly sorry. Society never should have gone this way. Just as the family courts steal from men money and resources, for many of you from your fathers, to satisfy a lot of single mothers, a lot of women who will never be satisfied by their very nature, by their very choices. As boys, your dreams, your stories. Just as the family courts steal from men money and resources, for many of you from your fathers, to satisfy a lot of single mothers, a lot of women who will never be satisfied by their very nature, by their very choices. As boys, your dreams, your stories, the development and the roles you would have been willing to play in the world you would have been willing to protect has been stolen from you in order to feed the delusions. Many of them delusional, because girls really aren't that good at being warriors. There are some, not really that many. For example, how many girls really play at being warriors, on the playground, have their sword fights? How many do? How many for very long? Very, very few. How many boys? How many boys play sword fight? How many boys play soldiers? How many boys play at being the heroes, being the aggressive, strong action heroes in their childhoods? Every single one. And that is a difference inherent to biology. really inherent to gender relations as a whole, when they were healthy, that is being ignored and trampled upon by society without thinking of the consequences, because they're not thinking of the future. And because we're so used to giving women very few, if any, consequences for their behavior, it's got to start changing. And if you're a female watching this, well, first of all, if you've reached to this point, kudos for reaching to this point. You need to stop. You need to stop making fun of boys, and you need to stop hurting them, because they are hurting, and it's not funny. And this I don't need no man attitude. These boys are stinky, smelly, too rambunctious for their own good, can't do things they've trained for their entire lives half as well as girls who have for the first time picked up their lightsaber, or for the first time flown a plane. Boys, young men as a whole, sick and tired of it. And what that is going to mean, you might not care right now, but what that is going to mean is if you keep it up in your teens and 20s, and if you decide at those ages that you want to date, you want to find someone, you're not going to find anyone. Because this has gone too far. It's gone too far for too long. And you're really in danger of ending up alone forever. Because it's been pushed too far. And because it is actually used to destroy lives. And so if you're a boy, or a man, I would say, when you date, if you choose to, a lot of boys and men are choosing. It's a movement called MGTOW, men going their own way. A lot of them are choosing to opt out entirely, or at least out of committed marriages, not because they're afraid of commitment, but because the risk is so great. Because the risk of the family courts, the risk of being destroyed by a made-up false accusation is just way too much. See, the thing that a lot of women don't understand about men is we are hormonally, biologically, inherently, we are risk takers, but we are also very good risk assessors. In fact, that's what allows us to develop into, again, if it is guided right, good providers and protectors. And the risk is not worth it anymore. So going back to if you're a boy or man, you choose to try and date, and the girl calls herself, or ever did call herself, a feminist. Don't stick with her. Don't give her a chance, because that is too great a risk still. I can't tell you what to do, of course. I can't make your decisions for you. But it is what I would highly suggest. So, well, that was quite a lot, wasn't it? So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Or I guess, even if it wasn't exactly enjoyable, I at least got a lot out of it. There's so many things still to talk about, so many directions I could have gone in. If you would like me to talk about something, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you wish. I did, when I began my channel, I did just want to talk about, I wanted to make my fossil entries, I wanted to talk about prehistoric creatures. That is really what I had in mind from the beginning, but the world is in such a dangerous place right now that those who have the ability to talk about world issues, about politics, need to jump into the conversations from time to time. If you would like to have an online conversation, let me know. Let me know, and I will see you in the next video. This is Kestrel Raptorial. Bye, everyone.